Good afternoon, my grade 5-6 class. Today's music lesson is the scheduled lesson for January 7th. And I would have handed out to you at our last class that we were in person, a music symbol worksheet like this, all right? So the instructions for this, and I did mention it, but I'll just review it. You can either take your worksheet out and cut all of these out in their tiny little boxes, and then they can be glued in the appropriate spots, or you can simply read the definition and put the proper picture, draw it up here, which is even a little more challenging if you want to have a little more challenge to that. Now, I want to quickly make sure that we understand all of these symbols, okay? There are some here that might be a little new to you. And I'm not going to point it on here as we go. I'm going to take on another sheet because then I want you to remember when you get to here. Now, each note has a note value. When we were together doing the conducting patterns with the batons or the conductor's wand, we talked about time signatures. There were two numbers stacked on top of each other. The top number, for instance, in this little picture, there's one right here. You can see it looks like a fraction. The top number was our indicator of how high to count per bar lines. Now remember, bar lines are like musical sentences that have a beginning and an end, and then the next musical sentence and the next musical sentence. So just like periods at the end of the sentence, we have bar lines. So if I were to take just about any book that you had, so I have a very easy book here, but you can notice that it has, at the very beginning, a time signature. And then as the notes play through, then there is a bar line right there. Some more notes and another bar line. Some more notes and another bar line. And each time you come to a bar line, you reset your count. So the time signature says how high to count, and the bar line says you're done counting, reset, start counting again. That's what the top number means. Now the bottom number identifies what kind of note is worth one beat. Most of the time, as I mentioned, we will see a 4 on the bottom, but not always the case. And as we go a little further in our music and we're playing some different pieces of music on our ukulele, we will likely have an opportunity to see some different time signatures. We talked about the 3/4 time signature, which was very common in waltzes, and there's other music that uses that too. And I challenged you that when you listen to the radio at home or in the vehicle or any kind of music, that you could see if you could figure out which conducting pattern it was. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4? Or was it 1, 2, 3? Or was it 1, 2? And those were the conducting patterns that we worked on together. In order to fill out this music symbol worksheet, I want to review the notes and the note values, okay? We will be doing some of these, hopefully in person. I have some really cute, neat ways of teaching that. But for now, we're just going to have to kind of use our paper to help us. So here is a piece of paper here. At the very top is the big guy, the big wig. That's our whole note. And in 4/4 time, that note is worth 4 beats. So it is called a whole note. If I split the whole note in half, it would be equal to 2 half notes. If we further divided it, look at how I keep dividing it, half notes, into quarter notes. So a whole note, it would take 2 half notes to equal a whole note, or 4 quarter notes. Remember, they're colored in notes with the stem. The direction of the stem does not matter, up or down. It does not change the value of the note. Now, we also talked about these in our drumming, bucket drumming. We had some of these, and we continued to divide the quarter note into eighth notes. So if I took a quarter note and divided it in half, I would have 2 eighth notes. All right? So a whole note could have 2 half notes to equal it, or 4 quarter notes to equal it, or we would need 8 eighth notes to equal it. Now, eighth notes can continue to subdivide, and I hope you can see that there. These guys, 1/8 note, if I split it in half, I would have 2, and they're called 16th notes. This is important in order to do the worksheet I gave you. The 16th notes have 2 tails. You see how the 8th note has 1 tail? The 16th note has 2 tails. Now, very often we will see 8th note in pairs. That you see 2 8th note, 2 tails. I could erase the tails and connect them. So that's very common to see 8th notes walking as pairs. They don't have to. They can walk separate, but we very often see them walking together. The same with 16th notes. We very often see them walk together. So they're connected with 2 lines. This has 1 line connector, and this has 2 line connectors. And these are 16th notes. Now, every note has a corresponding rest, and we had talked about that. The whole rest was the one that hung down and colored in, like that. And then we had the half rest, and that was the one that would sit on the staff, but it would sit up looking like a hat. Then we had the quarter rest, zig, zag, zig, letter C. And that was worth 1 beat. So whole note, whole rest, half rest, quarter rest. The 8th rest was actually interesting because it looked like a number 7, kind of with a little ball on the end. There it is. Now, to change the 8th rest into a 16th rest, we simply added 2 lines, not unlike we do the notes. You see how it has 2 going across? So, whole rest, half rest, quarter rest, 8th rest, 16th rest. Whole note, half note, quarter note, 8th notes, 16th notes. So it's probably pretty easy to tell which would feel like they're the most quickly played, and that would be the 16th notes. Look at how many I need in order to equal 1 whole note. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So I need 16 16th notes to equal a whole. I would need 8 eighth notes to equal a whole. I would need 4 quarter notes to equal a whole and 2 half notes to equal a whole. And that's kind of the tree there of the musical values. And then, of course, these are all the corresponding rests. When you look at your worksheet, I needed to go over that because there was actually some of those 16th notes and 16th rests, all right, in there. I think we briefly touched on that, but I know we actually hadn't played any. They're quite quick notes. So if I were to play a whole note, I would count 1, 2, 3, 4. If I were to play 2 half notes, I'd count 1, 2, 3, 4. If I were to count 4 quarter notes, I'd count 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I could change that into eighth notes and go 1, 2, 3, 4. If I did 16th notes, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that gets to be quite quick. So we will not likely be worrying about playing a lot of those once we move into our ukulele, but it's good to be able to know what they are from our musical symbol. Other than that, I think all of these are symbols that we have done. Many of us did it last year, and we briefly touched on it this year, early in September and October, before we started to dive deep into getting ready for our Christmas musical. So hopefully you understand this okay. When we get together next week on Tuesday, January 11th, there'll be another video, and we will go over this, review it, and check how you did. All right, I hope you have a great next few days. And we're missing you, but hopefully we'll get together soon. Bye-bye.